Yo! Welcome back to One More Mana. My name is Derek, and today I am so excited to bring you guys my first deck tech, looking at one of the new legendary creatures in Core Set 20. And I was very pleasantly surprised. The spoilers are just coming out, all of them still have been spoiled at the time of me filming this video. But what I see so far, I really like. You can bet the next few weeks are going to be filled with deck techs about just these awesome legendary creatures. I can probably say my favorite thing so far is that these 3 color combinations are getting kind of unique strategies introduced and or at least open-ended strategies that can let you do stuff that you weren't able to do before. And I feel like today's commander is a perfect example of that. Without wasting any more time, today we're going to be looking at Kykar, Wind's Fury. So Kykar is a 4-mana 3/3 flyer, so you're not starting bad. It's 1 blue-red-white, so Jeskai, for a 3/3 flyer. The first really cool ability is that whenever you cast a non-creature spell, you get a 1/1 flying spirit token, which is awesome. But then that ability to sack that spirit token for a red mana. So you have a free sack outlet, but not only that, but you're getting mana for it. That's super interesting and super important, and there's so many directions you can go. I've seen spell slinging decks, and I feel like that was the first thing I actually thought of when I saw this. You can go spell slinging or storm with a commander like this. You can actually go all artifacts, which would be completely reasonable, and just do a full artifact build as non-creature triggers. You can go full on token route. There are so many directions to go. And where I chose to go is kind of an in-between of where I think you can get a lot of different utility from all the abilities and have a diverse game plan in order to get this win. Basically how I see it is when you're getting these spirits, at the very least, it's like free mana. Essentially, if you're casting a non-creature spell, you're getting a red mana right back. And one of the most interesting ways I see to use this is with equipment. Because with equipment, a lot of it's cheap to play, but then you have to worry about an equip cost. But what if all those equip costs were just magically reduced by 1? And that's essentially what this is going to do. Because you play the equipment, you get that spirit, you can immediately sack it if you want to, get a mana back. And that is huge, especially if you're going that Voltron route, and this does have a lot of Voltron elements to it. If you're going that Voltron route, one of the hardest things is if your commander dies, having to replay it and repay all those equipment costs. In this deck, it's really not hard to have a buildup of these spirits to have basically spare mana. They're almost like treasure tokens in this deck, except you can block and attack with them. It's so cool that you get that kind of double utility from it. I love it. So we are going to have a lot of equipment kind of going that Voltron route. Kykar is already a 3/3 flyer, so it already has the evasion, and you can throw a bunch of other stuff on it, which I love. And then kind of built in with that, we're also going to do some token stuff. And I realize it might seem like 2 opposite strategies, but I think they kind of synergize a lot more than you think. For one, we're already producing tokens with our commander. Why not have some payoff, okay? I'll get into more of the exact payoff, but you want that. Also, with the Voltron deck, and I actually love token elements in some of my Voltron decks, especially in colors like this that support it, because Voltron, one of the 2 biggest problems you can have with Voltron is you start swinging at people, and then that crackback is just too much. You have nothing left to block, or you only have 1 creature, and you just get killed real fast. You got 3 people that can take you out. You're not going to have blockers. That's not good. The other huge problem with Voltron is if anyone is running any type of Grave Pack effect, any type of Sacrifice a Creature effect, any type of Edict effect, you're just screwed. You're not going to be able to even play the game at that point. And having token fodder, it's invaluable. Because Kykar is going to be producing the tokens as we're going for that Voltron route, having a splash of token synergies, I think, is a great way to just further benefit from Kykar producing the tokens beyond just getting mana back and having an alternate win con in games where Voltron might just not work. So taking a look at the creatures, there's not very many. We're not going to run many because we want non-creature spells. The whole point of the deck is to get these triggers, to get these spirits, and the great thing is you don't have to run many creatures because if your commander's out, you're getting creatures from casting non-creatures. So it's a great kind of, you're not incentivized to run many, but there's a few we need. And the first one is Brutaclad Telkor Engineer. Brutaclad is insane in this deck. Essentially, it's just going to let you turn any tokens you produce into spirits. Brutaclad's amazing. In these colors, we have the ability to produce so many tokens, and to turn them all into spirits if we want to. You get just all this free sack fodder, all this free mana, and that can get scary. If all of a sudden you have a board full of tokens, people might not be too worried because, oh, they're not spirits. What are you going to do with them? There's not a Craterhoof in these colors. Well, all of a sudden you bring out a Brutaclad, they all become spirits. You get an explosive amount of mana out of nowhere, and that's enough to either turn that game around or just win it for you. Not to mention, Brutaclad gives all your tokens haste. And when you got, anyone who plays Locust God knows, if you get a bunch of 1/1 hasty flyers, that can get scary. Mentor of the Meek is another all-star in this deck. Essentially, you play a non-creature spell, you're going to get that 1/1 spirit, just pay 1 colorless and go ahead and draw a card. That is so powerful. So essentially you're just going to play every non-creature spell, and for 1 mana, you're getting a creature and you're drawing a card. That value gets insane, and that's one of the things is you want a lot of card draw in this deck. You want to be able to. It's a very low to the curve deck. It's lower to the curve than many decks I like to run, because we want to keep playing a lot of stuff out to get all those tokens. And a card like this just lets you refill your hand and just keep throwing stuff onto the board, whether you want to equip it all to Kykar or set up basically an engine with your tokens. This is a great way to refill your hand and make sure you always have fuel. And then I'm going to skip a couple very notable cards in this creature category. I'm going to save for later. But the one that I will talk about here is Twilight Drover. Twilight Drover is just a great spirit token creating engine. Essentially, all your creature tokens are going to keep getting sacked. This is going to fill up with +1 counters. You can pay mana, which you're going to get from those tokens, to just keep making more tokens. It's going to essentially get out of hand, and there are just scenarios where if you get enough mana up and enough spirit tokens out, you can just keep getting ETBs essentially, because you're creating more and more and more tokens, and believe me, we got payoffs for that. Now we can get the artifacts. We're going to run a lot of artifacts. As I mentioned, there's a very strong Voltron aspect to this deck that just goes hand in hand, like I said, perfectly with the token strategy. So first I'm going to take a look at the equipment that we have in here that lend itself to the Voltron part of the deck. The first, you have to include this in the deck. I feel like even if it's not Voltron, it's Blade of the Blood Chief. Oh my gosh, it's whenever a creature dies, put a +1/+1 counter on equipped creature. Not a vampire, so you don't get the extra effect. But oh my gosh. So essentially you're saying we get all these spirits, we just sack them all for mana, and then just fill our commander with +1 counters at instant speed. This is scary, because again, we can treat these spirits like treasures. We can keep them. We don't have to just sack them at any point. And with a card like this, you have all these spirits as basically fodder, and you can swing into somebody, and if they don't put their blocks right, sack a bunch of spirits, make your commander huge, have a whole bunch of mana on top of it, and take somebody right out of the game. And the last equipment I really want to talk about is Sword of Truth and Justice. This is one of the new ones from Modern Horizons. This card excited me. I love the word proliferate. No surprises there. I love proliferate. And to have a sword with it, I thought was really cool, and it's so perfect in this deck. We do have some +1 counter synergies that you'll kind of see as I get going. We already mentioned Blade of the Blood Chief. And to be able to put +1 counters on your commander and just proliferate and make it grow and potentially make everything else grow, this card is just amazing in this deck. Not to mention getting protection from white and protecting yourself from a lot of the exile effects and stuff like that. And white has a lot of very good point removal. This is an amazing piece of equipment to have. And then when it comes to the non-equipment artifacts, there's really just one I have to talk about, and it's Biden of Thassa. This card is insane. This card is an all-star. I have a Locust God deck that is an all-star in. And really when I'm looking at Kykar, you're getting 1/1 flyers, so you're going to have a lot of easy poke damage through the air, essentially. And this is a great way to just fill your hand up. When you get these little flyers coming in, poking people, to draw cards and again, refill your hand with the low CMC deck I already said. We want to be playing out a lot of cards to get all these tokens. If you can just keep drawing and refueling your hand, it makes it so much easier to maintain a board presence if anything does happen to your board. Taking a look at the enchantments, the first one I'm going to talk about is Arcane Adaptation. Essentially, it's just going to let us turn all our tokens, and I won't point them all out individually, but if you look through the deck list, you'll see there's a number of token producers. This just makes all of our tokens turn into sack fodder. All of our tokens essentially turn into mana. You couldn't want anything else from a card in a deck like this, where you really wish all your tokens were spirits. Speaking of tokens, Cathar's Crusade. Oh my gosh, this card is so perfect because it's gonna help both your Voltron strategy and the token strategy, and that's what I love is so many of the cards synergize like that. With Cathar's Crusade, essentially every time you make a spirit, all your creatures are getting +1 counters, including your commander, and that's where it's so important. I realize to incrementally buff your commander, 5 mana might be a lot. But this just gets so scary because essentially you're getting this massive commander buildup as all these tokens are coming out, and you have this huge flyer. And the craziest thing is, even if they find a way to deal with that, then they just have a board of giant creatures. And a lot of them have flying because they're spirits. They all keep getting buffed. I already talked about the proliferate triggers we can have. Cathar's Crusade, if anybody's played it, they know how powerful it is. If that stays on the board, and especially in this deck with how fast the tokens come out, for a couple turns of the table, maybe even a turn of the table, the game could just end. And the next category, I won't name them all, you kind of see them come up as I talk about them, is just enchantments that give your commander fire breathing. I absolutely love this category, and this is actually what gave me the idea to go Voltron, is to take advantage of cards like these, and a lot of them are very resilient. Some of them come back to your hand, some of them you can bounce. So that way, if your commander gets removed, you just get it right back, and they're really cheap to play. My favorite thing about these cards is, similar to the Blade of the Blood Chief, you swing in with your commander, and if you ever get in a situation where it's not blocked, no blockers are declared, it just gives you the ability to sack all the spirits you want and make your commander huge. And 21 commander damage adds up fast. This just gives you flexibility to where, if they're in range, perfect. Sack a bunch of spirits, take somebody out of the game. And if they're not, you don't have to worry about sacking your tokens. You can leave your currency essentially for later. And it gives you so much flexibility, and they're all really cheap to play. And you get a spirit when you play them too. So they synergize so well, and it does really what we want to do. There's a number of them you can put. You can go full on into this and put all the fire breathing effects you want. Felt like this was a good balance, but I feel like they synergize so well you want at least a few in the deck. And the last enchantment I'm going to talk about is Jeskai Ascendancy. This card is super powerful. If anybody watched the spoiler on this commander from the command zone, they went into all the detail about it, so I don't think I need to talk about it too much, but it is super, super powerful. It's ridiculous. Essentially, it's going to do something similar to that Catherine's Crusade effect, except you also get to loot every time, which is amazing. As I was just saying, we do want to sift through cards and get through our deck. So to be able to pump the team, and especially in this deck, because we're going to have so many tokens, to be able to pump the team in addition to our commander, our board is just going to get so scary, and your opponents aren't going to know whether to try to deal with that one big threat or the army of tokens looking to smack them in the face. Take a look at the sorcery. We have a couple board wipes, some wheel effects, stuff that I just love to basically put in these colors essentially. But there are a couple that I really want to point out, and one is All Is Dust. This card is so cool in this deck. I realize we're going to have tokens. A lot of the time we don't want to just wipe the board. We want to have our board. But if something does get too scary somewhere else, this is amazing because we have all these equipment. I already mentioned we have a lot of ways to buff our commander with that. And essentially, if we're able to board wipe and leave our equipment on board, that is insane. And especially because we can float the mana. So if we have a scary enough board state, but someone's even scarier, you can play All This Dust, sack all your tokens to Kykar in response, just float a bunch of mana, and then you can just replay Kykar and re-equip stuff. And I love the flexibility that I love being able to get. Obviously, it's not fully a one-sided board wipe, but I feel like we could benefit a lot more from it than other people will. But we're actually going to run a few Planeswalkers in the deck too, and I think a Jumbo Commander, speaking of the command zone, he did mention that you can go actually a full Planeswalker build, which I think would be super interesting. Just colors you don't really see Super Friends in. But there are a couple of Planeswalkers I really just have to talk about. And the first one's Saheeli Sublime Artificer. This is essentially doubling our commander's token producing ability whenever we cast non-creature spells. We're getting additional tokens, which is exactly what we want. And then Hermione gives us flexibility to turn the tokens into different things, and especially with all the equipment we have, that can get really interesting. And then obviously we're running Elspeth. I said the word tokens, so Elspeth is going to be in there. Shouldn't be no other surprises other than that. Elspeth is super powerful. If you're running white, you're running tokens, put Elspeth in there. And then looking at the instants, again, kind of similar to the sorceries. The instants and sorceries are kind of just filling those, like, kind of the bread and butter roles a lot. We have some counter spells in here. We're running, that's white, we're running Teferi's Protection. That shouldn't be a surprise. But one I find super exciting is Dragon Rage. Dragon Rage, see, one, that's an amazing name for a card. Two, this is so cool. Just think about it. If you have a decent number of spirits on board with your commander, you play this. All of a sudden, you already get red mana for all the creatures you have. Then you can go ahead, sack all those creatures for a whole bunch more red mana, and this card gives your commander fire breathing. So essentially, you're just pumping your commander a whole bunch. On a modest board state, it's real easy to have, say, 5 spirits. It's giving your commander plus 10 plus 0, and that is scary. When you only need to get to 21, and just from that modest board state, 13 commander damage can be getting through, yeah, that is scary. And then taking a look at the lands, the land base is pretty basic. There's nothing too exciting, but there is one card I really do want to talk about. That's Hall of Helios Generosity. This is another new Modern Horizons card, and I love this because I don't run white in a lot of decks, and I really don't run any Enchantress decks. So when I saw this card, I was like, I need to find a place to put it somewhere. I feel like this deck would be perfect for it because we're not running a ton of enchantments. We have a good number, and the ones we have are super important. So having just that flexibility on a land to be able to get enchantments back seems amazing. All right, now it's time for the best part of this deck, and I'm sure you guys already know it's coming. It's the game-winning step. How are we going to win the game with this deck? And there are some explosive and fun ways. All right, so I'm going to break this game-winning step essentially into 2 categories. Like I said, you've already seen that the tokens we produce are going to synergize super well with our Voltron strategy. But we can kind of break this down into 2 separate ways. Let's say the token route takes off. How are we going to win like that? And there's a few great ways to do it. And the first is Moonveil Dragon. Moonveil Dragon's amazing. It's a fire breathing effect for the team. You pay red, all your creatures get +1/+0. So technically this is also the Voltron strategy. So really what you can do is swing out with your team of tokens. If any spirits get blocked, or you just want to sack some of them, or you have extra mana, go ahead, spend all that mana and pump everybody. And essentially you're going to get a whole bunch of damage through. And there's opportunities essentially to just take out somebody out of nowhere. Or you can take out multiple people where you could focus the commander damage on one and focus the team of all of a sudden pump tokens at everybody else. I love this effect of being able to spread fire breathing over the whole team. The next way, I said tokens, so this has to be the least surprising card in the deck. It's Perforos. Oh my gosh, Perforos. Do I need to talk about it? There's tokens, play Perforos, tokens enter, opponents die. This next way to win is something that I don't normally do, and it's technically sort of a combo win, and I'm not usually a fan of that, but this just seems super cool to me, and it's a card called Haze of Rage. Essentially, it has buyback too, so if you cast it, pay the buyback cost, it comes back to your hand, and it gives all your creatures +1/+0. So Haze of Rage has Storm on top of all this, and it becomes super interesting, especially when paired with a card, and here's the combo part, like Mana Echoes. Essentially, if you get some spirits out with Mana Echoes and you have this card in hand, so still kind of a convoluted combo. So essentially, a spirit enters, you get a whole bunch of mana because of Mana Echoes, and then you're able to cast this and then buy it back. And essentially how it's going to work is, because it's a non-creature spell, every time you cast it, you get another spirit, meaning a bunch more mana from Mana Echoes. And then the red mana you need, you can get from sacking that spirit. Essentially, you can just keep doing this and get infinitely large creatures. And again, not normally a fan of combo, but it just works so well in this deck, synergizing with a combat strategy. I find it super cool. And again, it's kind of convoluted, and I feel like pretty easy to interrupt. I don't feel like it's unfair in any way. But I just felt like, especially with all the fire breathing effects, to have essentially infinite fire breathing was a really cool way to kind of pump up the team and going for a win. And the last way I'm going to talk about is, no surprise here, smack people with Kykar. You got a big bird commander, legendary creature thing just smacking. Is it a crane? I don't know what kind of bird it is. It looks very interesting. But it's just flying through the air, throwing fireballs at people, smacking people, and just smash people's face with it. All the equipment, you just getting for commander damage. As I've already talked about, there's a lot of ways to do it. The way I'm going to specify for this step, though, is, do I even need to say it? It's Grafted Exoskeleton. You're going to infect people out. We got to infect Fire Birdie, and it's coming for people. So that's going to do it for this week's deck tech. I really hope you guys enjoyed it as much as I did. I thought it was really, really cool. I feel like the strategies just meld together so well in this deck, whether it's the team fire breathing effects or making all these tokens that we can turn into commander damage, or go wide if we need to, have blockers up when we need them, have sack fodder when we need them. And I feel like it can also offer some great variety that maybe some other Voltron decks might lack, and make the games just vastly different depending on how you're trying to go about winning. But yes, as always, a huge shout out to all our patrons. We love you guys so much. Thank you for continuing to support us. I hope we keep putting out the content that y'all love. And be excited, because these next few weeks are going to be crazy with all these M20 commanders. I can already tell you from the few that got spoiled earlier today that I've seen, it's going to be a fun few weeks. So until then, I will see you guys next time.